Hey, everybody, thank you for watching our news segment once again. All of you who are watching around the world, we're so happy for all of our viewers watching our PIC TV network news world. We're so happy again for all of our viewers watching around the world. We always take time out to say thank you. We believe that kind acts should never be forgotten. That's why we want to say hello and thank you for watching from Brazil, France, Argentina, Nicaragua, United States, Colombia, Mexico, Guatemala, United Kingdom, Germany, Panama, Ireland, Peru, Chile, and wherever you're watching around the world. We want to thank you for your time. You're watching the PIC TV network, our news segment coming from Washington, D.C. I'm so happy today for all of these great panelists on today. And I want Michelle, she's helping me to moderate. She's helping me to run the news show. Michelle, come on and bring up the cast in today. Bring the team in.
All right. From Gary, Indiana, we have author Gina Gadsden, who's one of the co-founders of the Distinguished Authors Guild. Gina, tell everybody where you are, where you're from, and say hello to the wonderful folks out in the audience.
I am from Gary, Indiana. Still here. I'm not going anywhere. And I just want to say hello to everyone.
All right. Now, from New York, we have Patricia Friedenberg. Patricia, tell everybody hello and give them a warm welcome of where you're from.
Thank you, Michelle. And you could also call me Patty, also known as Patty. And as Dr. Evans says, Pat, I'll answer to any of those. And I'm from New York. I'm the CEO of Missugram, a global solution to cope with loss, moving at the speed of life. And today we had a hot one here in New York. And yeah, it's a good summer day. How about over here, Michelle, who is over here next to me? I like her. From Atlanta. Coach Jean, I believe.
Hey. Thank you so much. I am Nurse Coach Jean Turner here in Atlanta, Georgia. I think it's hot everywhere right about now. Great to be here. Holistic health nurse and nurse coach and author and speaker and host of Health Chat with Coach Jean radio show and podcast. And it's a pleasure to be here. Back over to you, Michelle.
Awesome. So we've got our cast of characters. And as you know, Dr. Evans is from the nation's capital, Washington, D.C. Now, we've been talking about connecting generations, but we also talked about what happened during George Floyd and some of the intersectionality of that. Well, I want to introduce everybody to this book called The Color of Money, Black Banks and the Racial Wealth Gap. It's important, number one, because when we talk about the history of slavery in our country and redlining and all those things that went down, that our kids know what happened. This book has a lot of information all the way from slavery all the way to now, as far as what was going on economically with us and what happened to the first supposedly black bank and what is happening to black banks right now. So if you get a chance, this is a great read and something that you should get your children involved in reading because it's going to give you some history. Now let's continue to connect our neighbors, our communities, and our families in this discussion. So, Gina, we were talking about how we were connecting the families. Now, what was your first job when you started right out of high school? What were you doing?
Well, my first job was in high school at the age of 15. I was a waitress at a very well-known famous restaurant here in Gary, Indiana. And I worked there until I graduated from college.
That is awesome. So those are the things, but do you have brothers and sisters, younger brothers and sisters?
I have an older sister and my younger brother. He has passed away, God rest his soul, but it was just the three of us.
So how did your family stay connected in your generations? Did you folks go visit folks in the South, or was all your family concentrated in the Indiana area?
No, my mom, my family's from Tuskegee, Alabama, and it was a ritual. Every year, 2, maybe 3 times a year, we went back to Tuskegee. I can remember as young as 5 years old, having our family reunions, as young as that, having our family reunions, and everybody from everywhere. We had family in St. Louis, Georgia, Virginia, and just everyone coming at that time of year and just enjoying each other. And as a kid, it was it was very fun. But as an adult, I thought that it was more helpful for my children. I wanted my children to know their family. I don't want my kids growing up dating or marrying a family member because they don't know who they are. And so I kept that ritual going. As a matter of fact, I am president of our family reunion. And it's a lot of work, but it's in the end, when we all come together, it's well worth it.
You said a mouthful. I can't wait. I've been vaccinated fully, and my we're supposed to be going to North Carolina in July. So my daughter is coming down here from New York this week, actually, Thursday. I'm going to be picking her up from the airport. And so been talking with my cousins, because me and one of my first cousins, we both turned 60 this year. And so hopefully we can get together and just celebrate each other. I miss them so much. I can hardly wait. What about you, Coach Gene? Are you going to be traveling? And are you guys planning these reunions and these reconnections after this bout of COVID?
So, as a matter of fact, Thursday, my husband and I are leaving the oldest son and my two youngest granddaughters, who we have not seen in some time. So we'll be traveling to the DMV area to see them, as my oldest son is still active duty and stationed up in that area. But as far as getting the entire family together, I see I have twins here who live in Atlanta area. I see them occasionally. Other than that, the trip, we're making no big, huge family gatherings yet are on the radar, but prayerfully very soon.
All right. Well, so Patricia, what about you? Is all your family in New York? Are you planning to get together? Are you planning to reconnect after COVID? If so, tell us a little bit about what's going to go on with you.
Well, it's funny you say that. Well, I happen to have a very small family. You can count them all on one hand. But my husband, on the other hand, has way big family. And you know what's so funny? One of the things when I first started dating him and then married him, I loved all those big gatherings, so I just adapted it, and for 30 years now I've been saying it's my family. Even before I was married to him, I was already considering it my family. And they just put a family reunion together in also North Carolina, and there's close to 100 people that RSVP'd, and they're all family. And I'm like, wow, it's amazing how much bigger and bigger and bigger. And one of the cousins, this was a few years ago, one of the family reunions, gave everybody like a booklet with all the family history, kind of something like you would see on like Ancestry. This was even before Ancestry, I think, even existed. This, like I said, it was years back, but he gave everybody like a folder with sheets and sheets of everybody that married into the family, who was, married in, who was from the bloodline, kids, and generation after generation. Such a beautiful, beautiful job he did, and I just admire that. But I'm excited about that family reunion coming up. So yeah, that's what will be in store for us.
That is awesome, Dr. Evans. What about you? Is your family getting back together after this COVID, and how are you reconnecting?
Yeah, we are. I just had my second COVID shot. The first one was good. The second was a little crazy, but it's done. I'm happy to be vaccinated. I'm happy to be. My wife is too. My son. Matter of fact, he's on travel now. I can't wait to see my other son, Steven. I haven't seen him in almost 7 months. He's in Hollywood, California, out there with the stars, Jamie Foxx and J-Lo and Post Malone. He's in the studio doing big things out there, and can't wait to see my son. And it's amazing You guys are just so awesome. The PIC TV network, leadership team is here today. I'm so excited again for all of you. When you look at Michelle Cox, those who are watching, she is also our public relations person down in Atlanta, Georgia. We also have our representative down in Atlanta, Georgia, also Jean Turner. Jean is also our referral manager there, and we have Pat from New York there, and we're trying to pull in. We're trying to get them to all the way from Gurion and Aunt Tina to come on our team. These women are so awesome, and we still get comments coming in. Linda, thank you, Linda. You rolling with us. Linda says family connection is important. I want to talk a little bit about the 4th of July is coming up. We know that everybody celebrate, but when we were young, it was a little different. We had things like the snakes, the sparkles, the firecrackers, the cherry bombs. I remember when we were young, we had these big, Linda, you know about that. I know Linda know about that. We were growing up, one of my favorites was the sparkles, and man, I can throw them around. And we would light up the whole street. I want to hear from Patricia in New York. We would light up the whole street, even in DC back in that time on Spring Road, the whole street. We're talking about back in the 70s and 80s, maybe early 90s. We would light up the whole street. It was just so beautiful. Talk about your favorite moments on the 4th, Pat.
I gotta say, Sparklers was definitely a hit, I must say, but working up to the nighttime fun of the Sparklers, like a good old barbecue, and getting excited for the Sparklers, and and I think that's, I would like to see more of that. We just recently started going back to our old traditions and reconnecting with friends and going back to old school barbecue. That's what, to me, was part of the fun, up to the excitement of the fireworks. Now it's all these big shows, and they're beautiful, but it's different. It's just not the same as it was growing up. How about you, Michelle? What do you say about it?
Well, 4th of July for me has always been about, we normally used to have our immediate family cookout. We had the kids and the grandkids, and we would all hang out. And then at the end of July, we would go up to North Carolina and hang out with my cousins. And then around February, my aunt, my last living relative as far as my dad's side, the oldest one, my aunt, she was 90. So we went to her birthday party, and she had a 20th style birthday party. Amazing. Had so much fun with my other cousins. So I got lots of cousins on my mom's side and lots of cousins on my dad's side. My dad's folks live in Louisiana. My mom's folks live in North Carolina. So the 4th of July is always fun, always barbecue. But the other thing I enjoy is I also get to see my friends. This year is really important because all of my friends, our whole class, we're turning 60 this year. And, we've been going on Facebook, going back and forth, because we were actually going to have a 60th birthday celebration, all of us. And there's about 500 of us from the high school that get together. They let me come, even though I graduated early, they let me come and hang out. And so that's one of the things I look forward to 4th of July. And usually I grew up in Mississippi, we have the Mississippi picnic the end of June or the end of July, the middle of July, depending on who's organizing it. And sometimes we have it, every other year we have it in a different city. So I don't know when it's going to go back to Meridian, but they just had the Juneteenth celebration this past weekend. So 4th of July is always special. I always remember my dad. My mom would be doing the prep work. My dad would be out there grilling. We would be running around, going to the park. My best friend lived at the bottom of the hill. And we used to spend the 4th of July with the Lewis family. And I don't know if you remember, I talked about Mrs. Lewis. She was 102 when she passed away. But her husband and my dad were best friends. They were both Navy men. her mom and my mom were best friends, and me and Audrey, we were diaper buddies. We were best friends, and then all the sisters and brothers were also best friends. And so we took our 4th of July vacation. We went out to the reservoir and we hung out with the Lewis family. And can you imagine 2 families? Because they would go back and forth because they had Mr. Lewis had a truck and Mrs. Lewis had a station wagon, and they would haul us kids in the truck and the station wagon. It's so much fun. What about you, Gene?
You know, amazing. Mine was like that. My parents separated when I was like 10, 11 years old. But I do remember on a Cape, being on Coney Island, the boardwalk, you know, back then when I ate hot dogs, you know, the Nathan's hot dogs, and, you know, they had the big 4th of July. And I still think they do this, Pat. Correct me if I'm wrong. 4th of July hot dog eating contests and stuff. And it was either Coney Island or Rockaway Playland, one of the two. But it was rare and few and far in between. But that's what I remember growing up. 4th of July in New York, and then watching the big fireworks display down there around 34th Street on the television. We watched it on TV.
And what about you, Gina? What did you do for 4th of July? How did your family celebrate? And what do you remember?
Oh, it was always a big shindig. Everyone would come to our house, and my parents would do the same thing. We would have at least 3 or 4 barrels in the backyard, barbecuing. I remember times when my mom would even she would barbecue whole pigs. And but that tradition has not changed. My mom is very traditional. She still carries on that tradition of the holidays. She just does big things. And this 4th of July, actually Saturday the 3rd, all of my children are coming home. My daughter's coming from Vegas with her family. My son is coming from Virginia with his family. My oldest son is here already. So I'll have all 11 of my grandkids there spending time at my mom's house. I've ordered 3 bouncy houses. It's just going to be great. And those are the times that I remember, and we still have them. I'm just so blessed and happy that we still have those times. And, you know, it's nothing like having family over and enjoying family.
And that's what being connected is about. This 4th of July holiday means a lot of things to a lot of people, but for us and for a lot of folks that I know, especially after COVID, it's a point of reconnection. Juneteenth, 4th of July, the celebration of family, the celebration of just being able to get some hugs and get some loves. What about you, Dr. Evans?
Yeah, I can't wait. You know, I always love 4th of July. I'm going to go over to the National Harbor and sit on the bridge, you know, and just eat some hot dogs. I don't eat hot dogs a lot, y'all, so I'm going to eat some hot dogs. As you see right behind us, right in the middle, is the Washington Monument. In the middle of this picture, I'm going to try to see if I can zoom it in some more. But, yeah, this is the Washington Monument right there, where it's just America celebration in Washington, D.C. It's so beautiful. We take it serious. That's one thing we do. We make the 4th of July real big in D.C. So we're going to have a good time. I can't wait to see everybody come back together, especially with those who had COVID and haven't seen their families in a long time. And, you know, it's amazing for us to come back together. Hey, we're going to take a commercial break, you guys. We're here watching on the PIC TV network, our new segment, part 2. Now, all of you getting ready for the 4th of July. We want you to turn on PIC TV network while you're sitting around eating your hot dogs and your watermelons and your hamburgers and prepping that food. Turn on PIC TV network. Look at Michelle. Look at Gina. Look at Coach Turner. Look at Pat from New York. Look at all of us. Look at me from DC. This is our network, your network, the PIC TV network, and we're excited for all of you. Our special segment coming up. We're going to take a commercial break, and we're coming right back at you. Don't touch that dial. We're going to be right back right after this.
It's finally Friday again, and as we head into the weekend, we head out with Walt Grayson as he goes about Mississippi exploring places we may or may not be familiar with. And Walt, you have a story about a place most of us have never seen.
Oh, I wouldn't think so. Maybe from the road for the hardy adventurer, but we get to go down inside the Devil's Punch Bowl, just north of Natchez. It looks like a jungle from up above. Down below that first bluff east of the Mississippi River, quarter mile, maybe a half mile past Natchez City Cemetery. You're 200 feet up right here, and your footing falls almost straight down into a two-pronged indentation into the bluffs that sort of looks like the roots on a molar tooth. The moderate seclusion it afforded from boats on the river just below it and travelers on Cemetery Road just above it gave rise to all sorts of rumors and legends of dastardly deeds that were supposed to have happened in here. A river pirate hideout, a holdup for Natchez Trace bandits, where massacres and murders and mystical things have happened. 2 airplanes actually have crashed into it over time, and other stuff. So much stuff that people started calling it the Devil's Punch Bowl. David New took me down into it one morning so I could get a look at what was really there.
As the Civil War drew to a close, thus legitimately free individuals and escapees alike were captured and held in contraband camps, so named because as commodities, they were considered contraband by Union troops who had no qualms about perpetrating slavery for their own benefit. 3 such camps existed in the Devil's Punch Bowl area of Natchez. A massive exodus of former slaves from southern plantations trekked northward in hopes of reaching a location of true freedom, but embittered soldiers, resentful that the people considered property were now free, had other plans. Researcher Paula Westbrook, who has extensively studied Devil's Punch Bowl, noted, when the slaves were released from the plantations during the occupation, they overran Natchez, and the population went from about 10,000 to 120,000 overnight. Unable to grapple with an instant population swell, the city turned to Union troops still lingering after the war to devise a merciless, impenitent solution. So they decided to build an encampment for them at Devil's Punch Bowl, which they walled off and wouldn't let them out. Former director of Natchez City Cemetery, Don Estes, explained. Devil's Punch Bowl is so named for a cavernous bowl-shaped gulch walled off by treetop cliffs. It was the perfect place in the heart of nature for the army to enslave people and carry out their regime of torture. The men were forced to undergo heavy labor throughout the day while the women and children were simply locked up behind the walls. Every slave, man, woman, and child was starved and kept in the worst of hygiene conditions. The slaves died of torture by starvation and exhaustion. After the slaves were dead, the soldiers kept their bodies to rot inside the camps. They never cleared or buried the bodies. Instead, they provided inmates with shovels to bury their slave brothers and sisters inside the camp. They were told to bury them where they dropped. Such conditions, along with the camp's location and climate of the region, contributed to the outbreak of several diseases that infected and killed the slaves. One of the major diseases contributing to the fatality was smallpox. Estes said of the concentration camp prisoners, they were begging to get out. Turn me loose and I'll go home back to the plantation, anywhere but there. Locals say human skeletons occasionally wash free from the location in times of heavy rains and flooding. Wild peach trees now dot the basin where human beings who believed they finally won freedom from slavery were tortured and died, and these peach trees are believed to be fertilized by their bodies. Like so much about the history of the United States, sadistic acts perpetrated by officials acting on behalf of the government have been deceitfully downplayed to lessen shame and facilitate collective memory loss. Whatever the full truth about Devil's Punch Bowl, it's a veritable guarantee no history book will be honest or thorough enough to shed light on the excruciating conditions similar to Nazi concentration camps. This is the Devil's Punch Bowl.
Black problems, black issues.
We've all been hurt at some point, even abandoned. Many of us have done the hurting ourselves. We get to the point where we don't trust anyone, nor do we feel worthy of being loved by anyone. Then there's that one person who just doesn't give up on loving you. Their love is unconditional. Their love stays long enough for you to heal. And then they promise to never leave. That's love you can count on. God's love.
Hey everybody, thank you for tuning back to the PIC TV Network, our news segment. I just wanted to play that for educational purposes. You know, a lot of people don't understand about some time in history that is forgotten from our people. And I'm going to ask Michelle to talk with me for a minute, you know, before we close out this segment. We pick it up on next week on our subject again. You know, when I learned about the Devil's Punch Bowl, Michelle, about 2 years ago, I had graduated from college, graduated from high school, taught in college, taught in high school, and didn't know that it existed. You know, when I looked at history and found out that that's not in our history books. And just for educational purposes, because Michelle, I know you can handle what I'm saying. You know about Mississippi.
I do.
You know about the situation. And it was deliberately hidden from us in history books, college books, and others. Michelle, but you know that situation or that presentation that's only on YouTube, it's not on any other movies, it's not out there, but that was real, Michelle. I want you to talk about that for a minute, Michelle.
Well, when we talk about slavery and then the end or the so-called end of slavery, we went from slavery, then we went into Jim Crow, or we went to occupation. There was about 6 years of us supposedly having freedom, but for a lot of people that wasn't attained, just like we know when we talk about Juneteenth in 1865, this is 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation that the news started getting out to other places, because unlike today where we have the internet and we have instantaneous news, people didn't get to the fact that they were free. Now, let's also talk about the economics. The South had cotton and tobacco, two cash crops that were sold internationally. Along with the Bank of London and other banks, blacks were considered commodities. And because we were considered commodities or human capital, we were only to be pushed into things that would benefit those people that were in charge. And that's where it was in Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia. So they went from that. They also went to the prison pipeline. So they started using peonage or trumped up vagrancy charges to round up black men during the harvest. And they would send them off to these work camps and work them to death as well. There's another story called Slavery by Another Name. It's on PBS. You can get it on either on PBS or NPR. That will help you to understand. Also, this also will help you understand the racial wealth gap between black and white people. It will literally, historians say, take us almost 250 years for black people to catch up with the wealth gap because of all the systematic racism that kept us in poverty, redlining districts, not having good schools, or let's even talk about white flight. We would want to move out of the ghetto, but they were keeping us ghettoized by keeping us menial jobs. That's when we talk about why black banks, the first black bank was supposedly, and it wasn't a black bank, it's where the Union soldiers, the black ones, had their money, the Freedmen's Bank. It was supposed to be where they kept their savings, and they said if black people were to, number one, be thriftful and save their money, they could own a home, they could own property. But during those times, they would not even let black people farm for subsistence, where they would grow food. They could only be, they were put into this whole trap, the debt trap of being sharecroppers. And because everything was a note, and the people that were sharecropping or the people that were over the sharecroppers, they will always find a way for them to not have enough money, and that debt would just circle and circle and circle and circle. So let's talk about now. we talk about gentrification. Well, if you're enslaved and you can't legally own property, how are you expected to catch up in the wealth gap? Even now, they have covenants. If you guys just do a little research on land covenants, there were covenants that said you couldn't sell to black people, you couldn't sell to Jewish people, you couldn't sell to Mexicans, you couldn't sell to people that were LGBTQIA. So all these things that were going on to keep people oppressed because the people in power, and when we talk about power, we're not just talking about because they were white, we're talking about because they own the money. They had banks that were actually participating in the slave trade. And that is why the conditions in Mississippi, that's why as soon as black people were coming to be conscious, they said, no, we don't want you to learn how to read and write. But at the same time, not wanting us to learn how to read and write. Then when they start building schools, why can't you read and write? Because every time we learned how to read and write, the people that could read and write were getting murdered. So that's why there was a stigma around reading for a long time. People were scared to read, especially black people. So then we were like, okay, we need to write. We'd like to write the vote. Okay, well, they would give us literacy tests. And then for the poor whites that couldn't read, they had a grandfather clause that they would make them eligible for voting even when we weren't. I remember when James Chaney got killed. James Chaney, Goodman, and Swerner were civil rights workers in the Mississippi area. They were coming back from Philadelphia, coming through Meridian. James Chaney went to my church. I know his folks. I went to school with his brothers and sisters, and they murdered him. I remember when they murdered Medgar Evers. I remember his brother, Charlie Evers, and they had a bounty out on him. So these are things that we grow up with. Are they changing? Yes. Is it slow? Progress has always been. But they killed Kennedy after he wanted to help. And the ones that want to help and are afraid to help, they ruined them politically. So there's a lot that goes on with that. Can we do better? Can we rise out of our situations? It's going to take a lot. But that's when we talk about connecting the generations. That is why it's important for everyone, young, old, and in between, to make sure that you know the history for yourself, that you're constantly reading, that you're constantly learning. Because now we have this whole talk about critical race theory and what that is. Well, critical race theory is a dog whistle saying critical race theory. The fact of the matter is, people don't want you to know your history. And when you don't know your history, you're doomed to repeat those same things that go on. They're still killing black men. They're still killing black women. We still have pockets of poverty. But it's up to each and every one of us to take a stand and lift our brothers and sisters up and out. And only we can do it. We can't wait on social programs. We need to work as a collective and start to make sure that we're taking care of each other, our Latin brothers and sisters, our poor people. If we start to work collectively on those areas, we can lift each other out of poverty and lift each other up. Dr. Evans, back to you.
I'm just lost for words. You know, when I listen to you speak on this higher level of history to us, Michelle, I'm just a student in your classroom. You know, I never been to Mississippi. I never been pulled over on a dark road being an African-American black man by police. I never been there. But when we look at this video, which we just saw, the Devil's Punch Bowl, Michelle been there. That's why I wanted her to speak. That's why I want her to get these words out to you who are watching all over the world. She lived in Mississippi. Michelle, I know this is an exclusive. I know we have other people. Gina is there, and Pat is there, and Jean is watching with us. But I want to ask you one more question, Michelle, before we close this segment. And they're okay. Why is it, Michelle, that you don't want to go back to Mississippi for time? Why is it you don't want to go back?
Well, what I remember is I remember segregation. And this is a story, and I am going to tell it and try to keep my emotions in check. I remember being 3, and my whole family, mom and dad, mom and all of us kids, we were sick, and we went to Dr. Stoddard's office. And we were military people, so we had just started living off base. And so my mom took us right in the front door, and you could see the hatred that people were looking at us. And the doctor had the nurse rush us in the back. And Dr. Stoddard told my mom, it's like, Mrs. Cox, I know you're military folks. I know you're not from here because we had moved from Boston. But I need you to know, unless you're going to take your family to the naval base for service, if you come to the doctor's office, you'll have to use that colored or Negro entrance. If you don't, they will burn my practice to the ground. That decision is up to you, but that's the only way I can see you. You'll have to come through the colored entrance. And I remember going down to Woolworths, and if you were going to get something, you had to go to the back. We almost didn't make it to Mississippi because my mother stopped to get me milk off the bus and had my sisters and brothers at the bus station. And it caused a commotion because she wouldn't go to the back door. So no, I don't want to go back to Mississippi to live. I have too many memories of how even now it's not economically viable for me to live in Mississippi, and that people that still want Black people to be in their place still run Mississippi. So no, Dr. Evans, back to you.
Wow, I can feel the passion. I can feel, wow, I'm a student in your classroom. I'm just touched by what you said. As we close out this segment tonight, I know we started out talking about the 4th and excitement, but we had to come back down to give homage to our people. Those people you saw was our people, not them, not they. These are my grandmother, my grandfather. I never seen my grandmother a day in my life, or my grandfather a day in my life. They died when my parents was young. Maybe they were back there in that time. I don't know. Before we close out, I want to go around the room. How did you feel? You know, I know you touched, I want to start with Pat, and then I'm going to go to Gina, and I'm going to go to Gina, and we're going to close out this segment. How did you feel when Pat, when Michelle was doing that presentation and speaking? I'm sorry.
I believe it because it's history, but you know, when you read it and you hear it from somebody live, it's just two different things. But I can relate a little bit because, again, you know, my last name is Frudenberg and I look white, but I'm first generation Spanish and my first language is Spanish. And you know what? Up until as old as 30 years old, I remember, you know, living in neighborhoods that were predominantly white, and you know, our car would get like vandalized and things would be said, you know. It's just really, you know, it just bubbles up feelings like it's just wrong. You know, we're people. And I don't know how people could treat other people like that, you know. But it really like hits my heart because like that's just, I don't know. Thank you for sharing, Michelle, though, because you know what? It's important that no human be treated like this, you know. Talking about 4th of July, I'm so proud to live in a free land, especially because I'm first generation here, and I pay so much respect for all those soldiers that made that possible for us, you know. And so this is ridiculous that we could live in this free land and think that's okay, you know. So yeah, our work is not done. Our work is not done. Over to you.
All right, Gina.
Yes, I can relate to what Michelle was saying. Here in Gary, Indiana, you know, there's a lot of that going on. I can recall when I was 9 months pregnant with my son. He's 37 now, but I was 2 weeks overdue, and my husband and I were pulled over by the police because our plates were expired. And we were in Maryville, Indiana, which is right next to Gary. And he made us get out the car. He towed our car, towed it to the tow place, and we had to walk home. We stayed on 43rd and we were on 58th. And I was 2 weeks overdue. And he told me the furthest he could take me was to the border of Maryville. And we had to get out and walk the rest of the way home. So I'm talking about maybe 13 blocks. And, you know, I remember that. I remember being treated like that when he could have given us a ticket and let us go about our way. But he chose to have me walk home 2 weeks overdue pregnant, and it was okay with him. I remember having the talks with my sons, my two sons, once they reached the age of 15 and getting ready to start driving, and schooling them on how to react if they were pulled over by the police. And I told them, expect it to happen, because that's a part of being a Black man. And sure enough, they both were pulled over for one reason or another, or just for driving while Black and being a male. I knew that it would happen. And so I prepared them for that. And even today, I pray for my sons, because it hasn't stopped. It's just more prevalent now. We see it more. And it's great to see that there's a lot of changes being made. And I believe we moved the needle a little bit with what happened with George Floyd. But then I think about, what now? After all that we saw and all that we learned, what happens now? I just feel like we need a leader to keep pushing us, a trailblazer. I don't think we have that. We need someone to keep pushing us forward so that we can keep moving the needle and getting further than where we are. I think right now it is a good time to be a Black person. And all the years, my 58 years, I have never felt that. But right now, in the time that we are, and the things that have happened and the things that are happening, I feel that we are in a good place as a Black race. Next to you, Coach Jean.
I pretty much concur with what everyone has already said. I've experienced that just somewhat. This is recent as probably about 3 or 4 years ago, before retiring from the Army, when I walked in a local supermarket outside of my duty station, and I had a Caucasian man look me up and down. I was in uniform, and he looked at rank, and he said, "Oh, I see that they promote just anybody now." And it threw me off. I was like, "Excuse me." And the cashier looked at me, and I'm looking at her. Come to find out, he was a former Marine, probably retired. I don't know what his deal was, but he looked at me, looked me up and down, saw my rank, and said, "Oh, I see they promote this anybody now." So, you know, may not have been to the extent to what you experienced, Michelle, your son's experience, Gina. But yeah, this was just hatred, and I took it as being just racist. His comment was just very appalling to me. And, you know, as a mother, I have all boys, all sons, grown sons, you know, constantly praying for them, their safety and their protection, because of the world that we are living in now. And so, yeah, I felt, I was sitting here angered hearing your story, Michelle, not towards you, but just to hear that you and your family went through that. And even now today in 2021, in many parts of this nation, that is still the story that someone is sharing with someone else, or how they went through the same thing or something similar, some form of racism. And here we are in 2021, and I'm talking about blatant racism. So it did anger me. I'm not gonna lie, because I'm straight no chaser. So yeah, back over to you, Michelle.
Yeah.
Well, Dr. Evans, and just to Gina's point, she said we need a trailblazer, and I'm going to respectfully disagree. what we need to do is make sure that we're always all our own trailblazers. We're always in our integrity. We're always standing up and making sure that our young people are developed and they know the history. That way they can always, number one, be in their integrity, and number two, defend themselves. The young people have been trailblazers for us, and they're standing up. To single out somebody as a trailblazer, that will always, it's an automatic downfall, because as soon as they kill the trailblazer, a lot of times movements die. The movement can't die. We're all blazing the trail together. Back to you, Dr. Evans.
Yeah, this has been a heart-touching, presentation tonight, and all of these presenters today have done a wonderful, wonderful job. I'm just so proud. When you hear about where we are in 2021, we still have to keep our eyes open. We still have to keep our mind. We still have to pass this information on to the next generation. What Michelle said, her stories is real. I have two sons, Stephen Evans in Hollywood, California. Amos Evans graduated from Pittsburgh, Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So we have to continue to pass the legacy down, pass these stories down. We cannot be forgotten about the Punch Bowl. We owe that. That's our ancestors. That's a time that in history that should never ever be forgotten. So we're excited for the PIC TV network. That's why it's so important for us to have our own African American network, so we can have these talk shows and news shows and presentations to people around the world, and they don't have to edit it out. I'm so glad we didn't have to edit out, you tonight, Michelle. You were able to talk in freedom, and Gene, you were able to flow in freedom from Atlanta. You were able to flow, and talk, Gene, and also the bubbly Patricia. We're informing you, we educating you, we inspiring you on the PIC TV network, and we have the entertainment, of course, but we have to keep it real. We owe it to our ancestors to keep it real. Dr. Martin Luther King, thank you. Harriet Tubman, thank you. Frederick Douglass, thank you. They shed their blood that we may have an opportunity to do what we're doing tonight, talking to people all over the world. Hey, this is the PIC TV network, keeping it real on our News World presentation. I want to say thank you for your time, everybody. Thank you for all your comments. We will be back on again. Our panelists were just superb, as always, doing a wonderful job. Stay safe, stay blessed, and always do the right thing. Thank you for your time, everybody. Until next time, we'll see you on next time. Bye-bye.
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 Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Happy 4th.
Rock of ages, cleft for me. Let me hide myself in thee. Let the water and the blood from thy riven side which flowed be of sin the double cure. Save me from its guilt and power, and not the labor of my hands can fulfill the law's demands. Could my zeal no respite know? Could my tears forever flow? Or could could never sin erase. Thou must save and save by grace. And nothing in my hands I bring, simply to the cross I cling. Naked come to thee for dress, helpless look to thee for grace. Foul I to the fountain fly, wash me, Savior, or I die. And while I draw this fleeting breath, while my eyes shall close in death, when I soar to worlds unknown, see thee on thy judgment throne, rock of ages cleft for me. Let me hide myself in thee, rock of ages cleft for me. Let me hide myself, let me hide myself, let me hide myself in thee. Let me hide myself, let me hide myself, let me hide myself in thee. Let me hide myself, let me hide myself, let me hide myself in thee. 'Cause you are the source of my strength, and you are the strength of my life. I lift my hands in total praise to you.
This is a plea to our brothers to stop killing one another. This is to the powers that be. I want you to realize we're part of God's family. We can no longer ignore what's happening in the streets. I can't walk down the street without you harassing me.